Okay, welcome back, everybody. Hello, everybody. You have the background. You can see the schach, the ceiling of the sukkah, but I'm not actually sitting in the sukkah because it's raining now. But it's a very special night, a very special holiday. This holiday actually has meaning for all of humanity. In the times of the temple, there were special sacrifices brought, and those sacrifices would bring spiritual protection on all the nations of the world. It actually says if the nations would have understood the type of protection that the sacrifices of the temple bring for them, they would have put armed guards around the temple in Jerusalem that it shouldn't be destroyed. And that's for regular sacrifices, but the sacrifices that are brought in the festival of Sukkot, which we're in now, were specifically brought, and they would bring protection of all nations, for all the nations of the world. And it says in the Tanakh, in the Bible, in the future, that all of humanity will be celebrating Sukkot, the festival of Sukkot. And if you think about it, when during the winter month, during the months of rain, in the Middle East, and in many places in the world, in the northern hemisphere, that's when things grow. And finally, we start to harvest all the food. And when all the food is harvested and we have enough food for the entire next year, that's a reason to celebrate, because we can feel confident that we have a year's food, and we will be able to serve God the way we see fit throughout the entire year, because we have supplies. So it's a triple happiness. Sukkot is a triple happiness. That's the time where we are judged for the income for the entire year, the rainfall for the entire year. And so it's a very happy time, and it's a time where we show our trust in God that everything's taken care of. Now, every night of the Sukkot, there is a tradition that we have special spiritual guests. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, then Moses, and then his brother Aaron. And we also have a tradition that there are, from the Hasidic leaders, also come every night. So tonight we have the guest of is Moses, our teacher, Moshe Rabbeinu, and we also have from the Hasidic masters, we have the Mittler Rebbe, the second Lubavitcher Rebbe, which we've been studying on this lesson for many, many months. We've been studying his work, and we know also both of them are connected. That the Mittler Rebbe is a reincarnation of Rav Hamnuna Saba, and together with the Rashbi, they are reincarnation of Moshe, of Moses, our teacher. So, with this introduction, of the opportunity we have tonight, we have a special divine assistance from these teachers. We're going to start studying chapter 14. Is it possible to bring it up onto the screen? Okay. So what we've been learning, we've really figured out, and I really didn't really figure this out until I started to teach these chapters, that we have 5 metaphor on what goes on before Tzimtzum, before the first contraction, at the top of the order of creation. Then we have 5 metaphor for contraction for Tzimtzum itself. Then we have 5 metaphor for Rishimul, which is like the signature that is the beginning of creation. And now we're going to see there's 5 metaphor for Kav, for the ruler, and the Chut and the string. the ruler and the string. There is no ruler, there is no string. It's just one of the first things that God establishes in creating of the world is He creates a way of measuring a beginning, middle, and end, because really time doesn't exist, and time is also creation. So let's start reading. Mata yesh lahavin bebechinas hakav v'chut. Now, after everything that we've done till now, 13 chapters, we cannot understand the ruler and the string, that it is drawn from the signature canal, from the logo. Derech prat, and we're going to do it in all the parts, because we've learned in the earlier chapters that if we want something, if we want Hasidic reflection to make impact, it needs to be in the parts. We need to go into the details. So derech prat means we're going to go into the details. Of tzchila yesh lahavin be'inyan klalusei. First, we need to understand, before going to the parts, we need to understand in general what is a kav. That a kav, a ruler, is the exact opposite of the logo canal. Kine anekuda mera. One second. I'm just gonna stand up. Kihine anekuda mera hahelam istalkus. Akol achlo nisha rak kinekuda echas. When we put a dot on a page, it has a symbol. The symbolic meaning is that it's something hidden, and everything sort of like this rises up, disappears. Ad loy nisha rak kinekuda echas, until the only thing that we have in the communication is just a dot. V'gam nekuda reshim zeh, all this, and also this dot, or this what this remnants. Reshim also means remnants. Zeh mera bekinas heder ispashtos. It symbolizes the lack of spreading out lamata to below dafka. Dahainu inyan heder hamshtacha. In other words, it shows on the lack of something going down. Bisgalus, lack of revelation. Hayud, and it also shows of the lack of going down and wide, like the actual physical picture of the yud. The yud in the Hebrew alphabet looks like a dot, basically. It has no. It's not like if you write a letter like the hey. There's an inside, like the letter D, let's say. There's a big inside. There is no inside. V'chal is just, there's no empty space. Like it's known. Kiyudua, like it's known. V'hinei, and behold, binyan tzimtzum shalei melamayla. When we speak about the contraction from divinity from above this Rishimu, that all that's apparent in divinity is only this dot. It could be that the exact opposite of what we're thinking can actually become apparent. The results can be the exact opposite. Why? Because it is only a dot, so everything could be included in it. In short, in other words, even though you make a dot and it only shows on a total withholding of information, nevertheless, because it's only a dot, everything could be hidden inside it. Veremes. What's that word? 1 second. Gavna. Everything can be hidden in symbols. Remes means like it's a symbol and similar idea. And it's actually opposite of what we were thinking before. Zeu ikar sibas kol gilui hashpa canal. It could be that a dot is the reason why there could be actual revelation. In other words, let's say for a seed, for example, on the ground, the seed is the exact opposite of the power of growth. It's just like a little dot. but specifically because the seed holds in it, captures inside it all the information. That's why the seed actually allows the tree to grow. In other words, even though the Rishimu is only a dot, nevertheless, because it is a dot, it allows for creation to take place. However, the symbolic aspect of the dot, that it shows that it's not coming, that no energy is coming down, seemingly l'chaira means that first light. Zeu vada nikra tzimtzum gamer. This definitely shows on some sort of complete tzimtzum, of complete contraction, va'amiti, and a real contraction. La'ales v'lahasti l'bilti li'ave ha'er lamata. That it symbolizes that it's going to lahalim. Halim means to cover up, and to lahastir, to hide and to cover up, that the causes that the light will not go below. So therefore, if the main symbology of a dot is that it hides, how if the main symbology of a dot is that it hides, how is it possible that the dot will cause the exact opposite? And we're claiming and now that this is going to cause the line to actually happen, the ruler to happen. So now we've discussed the various possibilities of what is the symbolic meaning behind the dot, the yud, the rishimu, and it has two opposites. And how do they reconcile? So now he's going to answer. The truth is, a dot and a line are not two opposites. Because a line comes from the dot. And when you put a bunch of dots together, it actually becomes a line. So what the dot is basically a source code that you repeat it actually creates a line, creates a message. Now let's explain this, how it actually works. Like it's known, a dot is a potential energy, in contrast to a line. Just like any potential energy or any matter that is undefined, even though it's not spreading out, it is not for sure. It's not for sure that the dot should stay a dot. It's only because that's the nature of a potential energy, because it's higher than it's pre-state, it's before the spreading, and that's why the dot did not leave from its essence. Now we're starting the first metaphor, really. So before we weren't really doing metaphor, we were doing symbology. And now we're going to do the metaphor. So this is one of the famous metaphors where we keep on repeating the metaphor. We start, the first metaphor is the potential energy of a soul before it is even going into the body. That it didn't yet spread out to liven the body. The body is basically a rag doll, and this light of the soul shines into it, and it gives it life. That it starts to be like a living and breathing. The next one is the second. So the point is over here. Look at the soul as its potential energy before it goes into the body. That's the way the Rishimul works. Second metaphor is like the potential power of movement before it actually spreads to move. So the Rishimul is like right before something moved. It's like you know, in the 9/11, in the 1911, it's called cocked and locked. It's like ready to go. Now the third metaphor. It's like the power of growth before it spreads out to make plants grow. That's the third metaphor. So nothing grew yet, but the energy is cocked and locked. It's ready to go. It's potential. That's how the Rishima works. Fourth metaphor, like the power of thinking before it actually spreads out into the brain to actually come up with new ideas. So it's ready. It's all ready to come up with new ideas, but it hasn't come up with a new idea. And there are also many more metaphors, but that are similar. Is it possible to bring the text upwards so I can read it? Yeah. Harayuvan sheheder ha'hispashtus hazais lo nikrab tzimtzum hamiti. The fact that the energy hasn't spread out, that means it's not a real concealment. It's not a real concealment. It's not a real tzimtzum. Mitzad atzmei in itself. It's only for the receiver. For us, there's an apparent symptom, but it's not real. What actually is happening is not a real concealment and a construction. Really, it's just a potential energy that from it comes everything. Nimtza ko, bizgalos in a revealed way, vispashtus, and it spreads out from this potential energy. That is what the Rishima is. So we understood the Rishima as a concealing element, but now we've looked at four metaphors as the Rishima being a potential revealing energy. It's v'kahai gavna yuvan v'bekinas nakude legabe hakav. And similar, it's understood like when you were using symbology, the idea of a dot in comparison to a line. The reason why the dot didn't become a line is because it's still in its essence before spreading out. Still, as yet, it hasn't spread out. It's not that it's the opposite of the line, it's just in a potential form. And even though the energy, the divine energy creating the world comes through a contraction, hakol of everything, all of the divinity becomes like covered up. And the only thing that remains is only like a dot. The fact that it becomes a dot, it shows that everything of the essence is really somehow hinted in this dot. And because of that, because it has the entire essence encoded in it, that's why it's not spreading out yet. And now he's bringing the fifth metaphor, like the metaphor of a student in front of the teacher. And this is now a concept. We're going to use a concept in Jewish law, and it applies in many ways. So it's called like this: the Aidi Ditari Lemivla, because something's busy to swallowing. I'll finish it off. It's not written over here. Loy palat, it doesn't spit it out. Meaning to say, a student in front of a teacher, since a student is busy with all this focus swallowing from the teacher, that's why he's not talking at the same time. because he's busy lemivla swallowing the information lepalat, he cannot deliver. And in kashrus, this concept is used in the fact when we're kashering, um, we say like metal swallows, and let's say there's non-kosher meat swallowed up in the actual walls, the metal walls of a pot. So we need to boil it up again after 24 hours. We need to boil it up again to get out that non-kosher taste from the actual walls of the pot. And we say that as long as it's busy spitting out, then it's not going to swallow in anything new at that point in time. We also say, when it comes to people getting a bad influence from from their workplace or the people around them, so as long as a person's busy to spitting out, they're not going to swallow from their surroundings. In other words, as long as they're always busy torrid, they're always busy teaching, then they won't swallow from the surroundings, and you don't need to worry that the surroundings will cool them off because they're busy teaching. But over here, it's the opposite. I'm just saying this is a rule in life. And over here, it's the opposite. Since the student is busy swallowing, therefore, he is not teaching anything. That's why you see no revelation from the student. And the student becomes just like a dot. But Tzimtzum, the student is contracted. His whole essence is contracted. And he doesn't spit out. To become a leader for others, to teach others, based pashtus, in a way that he spreads out. He's not extroverting. When a person's introverting, like he's sort of like in himself, getting energy from his teacher, getting teaching from his teacher, he's not going to extrovert. That's not that same. At the same time, he's not going to be teaching. Amnam, however, achar kabbalose, after he received the information, adarabah, then the opposite happens. From this original contraction, that it was only one dot, from this dot, all the sustenance comes, and like the students now will be able to teach others, or extrovert, go out and teach others. Like this is written about this in a different place. So we've done 5 metaphors. From all of this is understood that a line that comes from a dot, all it is just a spreading out from a potential atzmi, from an essential potential something. Anything that comes out of this short line, is explained in another place. So just like a dot is the potential for a line, a line is a potential for length and width of space. It's known, even though a line comes in a way that reveals that it goes down and reveals from above to below, but it's not a defined energy yet at all in a specific way. The only thing that was established with the kav is that the energy goes down. There's a beginning and an end. There's a beginning, middle, and end. There's a storyline. There's a possibility of a teacher and a student. Because if everybody's the same, you can't have a teacher and student. You have to have a teacher and a student. You need to have, that's what a line is. Bilvad. And that's what it is. But it's not a defined potential. Now we see it in the Mittel Rebbe's exact words. What does the line achieve? What does the kav achieve? That achieves that there's a possibility of an above and a below, a maila, an above and a mata and a below. A teacher somebody who gives information about Makabel and the receiver information. Now we can go to the next page. However, the potential in a dot ain't by Mailamata. It doesn't even have an above and a below. It doesn't have a beginning, middle, and end. Kidua, like it's known. And this is the explanation of what it says in the Kabbalah Sefer called the Tree of Life. That was from the lessons of the Arizal. And he writes over there, the Kol Ikar Haras Hakav, the whole point of the idea of the energy of the ruler, it's only to be able to create the idea of above and below. Like it's explained, like I'm going to explain more. Ukemashal, now we're going to use a mashal for the kav. So we're going to use the mashal of the kav because kav means something. So in Hebrew, kav is a ruler. Amas habinyan is a measuring, a contracting ruler that contractors used. Shein ba begeder shetach habinyan atzmei. It's not part of the actual space of the building, the square footage, la'erech v'reichev, to the length and the width. Rak shebay meided kol medidas erech v'chol medidas hareichev. It's just that with the ruler, and now we use laser ones, but with the ruler, we measure all the length and all the width. Vu atzmei rak kamei kav katzar. But the kav, all it is just a short line. It inside it has the potential to be able to measure all the different types of ways of measuring length and width. So what a ruler is, the picture of a ruler, the picture of a line, is a potential to be able to create space. Of letters. It allows letters to be written with length and width. Just like the lines in the letter base. And like it's explained in another place. Now, I think we spoke about this before, that the Hebrew letters that we use in the Hebrew language, it actually, the shape of the letters are similar to the vibration that they make in the air. In fact, reality is a form of vibration. So a person shapes their mouth from the side in a certain way in order to create these vibrations, and they are the sounds. So the bass has a dot in the middle of it that represents the idea of of an accent, something like a stronger sound, like a b, like an explosion of sound, and then the mouth ends up opening up the top of the bass. The top line is like the top of the mouth, the bottom of the bass like the bottom of the mouth, and it's like basically a mouth open from the side. We go b, right? And so it just tells us how to shape our mouths when we sound these letters. So what I'm saying over here is that the kav is a form of vibration that allows from a teacher and a student, but then that vibration needs to be done in a few ways in order to create a letter and a story. Basically, a base is 3 lines. Like it's written about this in another place. According to this, even the beginning of the energy of the kav coming down from the dot, even though it spreads, and it goes down, but it's only a potential energy going down. It didn't create anything. It has the possibility to make different types of energies that come down for the length, reichev, and width, the midah in a specific measurement. Nikra kav hamida, and that's why the kav in Kabbalah is sometimes called the ruler of measuring, kiyadua, like it's known. And its shape shows, it symbolizes this. Shehu katzar, it's actually short. And the ruler comes from above to below, bilvad, and that's it. It doesn't make, it's not in itself, doesn't make space or three dimensions. But it really has, the ruler allows everything that's in potential in the dot to start to manifest. It's just that the kav is showing that energy comes down, and the energy comes from the power, essential power, which is hidden in the essence of the teacher, or God in this case, before he contracted himself into one dot. But the first it's a dot, but then it comes into a line. But the revelation is not the same way as it is in the actual teacher, because over there it is grand in quality. The vision and the idea, the way it is in the teacher, is harchavas ha'erach. It's totally grand. Shel atmos mamish, like it is in the essence. Uvakav hinezeh atmos ba lifierach hamakablim bilvad. However, in the kav, this essential grand idea, but it comes down in a way that the students can receive it, or the receivers, the humanity can receive it. It does have a little bit of this idea of this essential grand light, which is hidden in the dot. But just the novelty is that it comes down in a way of all that's happening is that now that there's some sort of delivery. Vim came gab bab betzir kav, and that's why it looks like a line. At least it's symbolized with line. Shuba b'chinas hayuli, which is potential. B'chol v'shefa makablim. It's a potential for all the light, the sustenance of the receivers. Chulu v'dal, and let's just summarize the way these 5 metaphors have been seen. And what really is meaningful is to look up the metaphor quickly inside the words of the Rebbeim, inside the words of the Mittel Rebbe. And if you don't know in Hebrew, you can look up in the translation from that's sold on Amazon. It's called the Gate of Unity over there. Look up the translation and remind yourself of the 5 metaphor, then connect it to a certain place in the appropriate words in prayer, and then stop right before saying those words and think about the 5 metaphor for each stage. So 1 second. So the metaphor for before Tzimtzum, the first metaphor was the metaphor of the birthday party. That was the very first metaphor that we brought. Basically, when somebody is a party organizer and they're doing it out of kindness, but when they actually have to organize the party, you see they have many other traits. And suddenly all these traits that we didn't know about become revealed. Many other qualities become revealed. So we have to say that these qualities were in the person before they made the birthday party. So too, when it comes to creation, that all of creation existed in the essence of God, but it was in a potential state. It just didn't know. When God creates the world, we realize, oh, this was already there in a potential state. The second metaphor that we brought then is, what was the second one? Oh, the power of movement. It's absurd to say that the actual energies, the actual creation is there, because once a person moves or makes a pitch, or throws a ball, makes a baseball pitch, and he makes different pitches throughout his career, we see the person had it in the potential. But it's absurd to say that those actual specific pitches existed in the essence, in the player before. So too, just like the birthday party, it's not like these traits exist and they have these little compartments in the soul, and the guy, it's like card tricks, and he pulls out this card and he pulls out that card. No, it's just one soul, and only when it manifests do we see that all these things existed there. But it's absurd to say that they existed like they had these little compartments that existed before. No, it's absurd to say that. Then the third metaphor, we said, we see that there was a metaphor of the soul, that the soul has the ability to be able to create an internal representation of the outside world. But it's not specifically hearing or seeing. It's only when it goes into the body, the soul says, oh, well, I need to see. So voila, it sees, it hears. But those abilities are not there in actuality as two separate abilities. But once they manifest, we have to say, well, the soul does have this ability to make internal representation of the outside world. That was the third metaphor. The fourth metaphor we brought is the sunlight metaphor, the spectrum of light, that once the spectrum of the rainbow comes out, we recognize that these lights existed in potential in the white light. Now, each further metaphor has a weakness, and the reason why we're bringing the first metaphor first, because that's the flagship metaphor, and each of the other metaphors teach us another detail, but they're actually weaker. And then there was the fifth metaphor we brought in chapter 10, was the metaphor of the power of growth, that once the building blocks of creation are established, the 10 spheres, the different traits, once and then they're measured out, then they need to transform. And that's the idea of the power of growth before it actually gets unified with the physical seed. It's all measured out. Everything's already measured out, how much energy is going to go into this growth. But it's only when it unifies with the seed, some sort of transformation happens. And this is the Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum is like a transformation from spirituality to physicality, even though it's in spirituality itself. But the contrast between before Tzimtzum and after Tzimtzum is like the difference between something spiritual and something physical. So then the Tzimtzum happens, and there are 5 metaphors we mentioned. First metaphor number 1, is a metaphor of a teacher that he gives a one line from the Mishnah, even though in his mind he has a few pages of the details of the Talmud is in his mind, but the student's not able to handle it. So he just gives this one liner, and he slowly teaches out and explains how everything's really in this one line. So there was no real symptom for the teacher. The teacher, nothing changed. It's the student that needed this process. But the teacher all the time, there's no concealment for the teacher. So there's no concealment for God. For God, it's as if it's like still before creation. It's as if we're just in a potential state, even though we were already created. But for him, it's like before Tzimtzum. The second metaphor is the metaphor, trying to remember. Oh, the metaphor of the human body, of the soul, giving life to the body. And he says that even if a person is missing a limb, the soul right there hovering in that place where there's a missing limb, the soul is there. The soul that's needed for that limb is right there. It's not missing anything. Just because he's missing a physical limb, the soul is still complete. So this idea of Tzimtzum, just because there's going to be a contraction, the entire divinity, the essence of God is still here. And he brings a sub-metaphor for that, and he says, like the power of growth. The power to grow any type of crop is in that ground, as long as it has the nitrogen or whatever the ground needs. But the power to grow wheat or corn or whatever the ground is going to grow, it's there in potential, even though right now we're growing corn. So the same way, the essence of God is really here, even though God decided to make this specific world, but there's really much more here of divinity than we can recognize. That's really the third metaphor. I'm getting, and what's the fourth metaphor? So 1 second, that was the fourth metaphor. The fourth metaphor is the metaphor of Tzimtzum, is the power of to be able to think. I could think medicine, I could think law, I could think all sorts of things, but right now I'm deciding to think physics. So God, the potential of God for all sorts of things is right here, but he decides right now to make this world, or this system of worlds that we live in. I hope I got all of them. Let's go through them again. The first metaphor was the Mishnah, the one-liner. The second metaphor is the power of the soul. Even when a limb is not there, the soul, the full potential of the soul to move that limb is there. The mini metaphor for that is the power of growth, that the power of to grow anything is in the field. However, it's only specific to what actually is growing, but it's still there. It's still hovering over there in that field. Oh, so the fourth metaphor for there is the power of movement. We have potential to move many different ways. Just because we decided to move one specific way, we have potential to move many different ways. That's the fourth metaphor. And the fifth metaphor is the power to think. Anything is here, even though we decided to think physics or something, something intellectual right now, but we have the potential to think all different types of intellectual things. So God is not limited to this creation. He's actually, when he's thinking, he's actually creating us. His thoughts are us. So, but he could think many different types of other things. And these types of metaphors help us to like disconnect from the limits of this world and to really properly address God and realize how he's really beyond. Now we have the 5 metaphor of the Rishimu. So we've done the 5 metaphor before Tzimtzum, 5 metaphor of Tzimtzum, 5 metaphor of Rishimu are, the first metaphor is the potential when we make a plan, but not even a plan, just a few jotting a few lines on a piece of paper, which is a plan for something bigger. The Rishimu really has the whole plan for the entire world, but and also it's really encapsulates and has in it the entire essence of God, but it's just all that we see is just like these few lines, like a plan. Or the second metaphor is an acronym. An acronym, from the acronym we know a lot. We can make a whole process of behavior from the acronym, but the student that sees the acronym and hasn't been taught what the acronym means, it's gibberish to them, or means something totally different. The third metaphor in Rishimu is the world is like something thrown. We don't see the thrower. We don't see the thrower. Things just orbit and move, and the sun rises and sets, and the same does, and the moon does it, and we don't see that there's some hand that's moving them. The fourth metaphor is a hand gesture when giving a lecture. The hand gesture helps us understand, but from the gesture alone, you wouldn't be able to understand the meaning. And it's something physical. It's a physical movement. It's supposed to teach us on something intellectual or something emotional behind it. So there's a transfer of the domain. We're changing from the physical to something emotional and intellectual. So that's what the Rishimu is. Rishimu is hinting to the essence of God. However, it's not apparent. The fifth metaphor is when we move our fingers to write a message, we don't see the words on the page, but we only see the fingers moving. We could trace that back to what those words are on the page and then read the meaning. We could do that, but there's a double concealment over here. Well, that's what the Rishimo does. The Rishimo creates a double concealment after the Tzimtzum. And then today, we are now on the fourth set of metaphor, 5 metaphor. The first metaphor is the potential of the soul right before it goes to give life to the body. The potential of growth right before it gives growth to a plant. The potential of movement before movement happens. The potential of thought before we decide to use our intellect, to use our brains. And the fifth metaphor is a student, when he's listening to the teacher, he's introverted to himself because he's preparing to be able to teach afterwards, but he hasn't yet taught afterwards. So there's an element of concealment, and we say the similar concealment that we see by the Rishimo happens by the Kav, but the Kav, we move one layer down to create the potential of a beginning, middle, and end, an above and a below, a teacher and a student, and then that building block could be used to create multitude of things to create space, the concept of space. First, we have to create space in a spiritual form, and then space can actually be, physical space can actually be created. So that is a summary of what we've been learning from chapter 10. Do we have any questions, any comments, any ideas? Sorry, Rabbi.
We have any questions? See down here? Okay. Did you ask for questions over here? Okay. Here, should I read I'll read the question. You began to talk about a line defining height and width, but you didn't go further. Is there a progression from a line to another dimension?
So he's using symbology, just like a line creates length and width, which creates space. And space is the idea of a domain, a home for an idea. So it's really beautiful. So the first thing we need to create is a beginning, middle, and end. And we need to be able to measure it. But then with that same ruler of beginning, middle, and end, we can create length and width. Once we create length and width, we now have a housing for ideas, a certain domain, and now we can create domains for different concepts and ideas, and then we can put those certain domains together and build things, build a creation. I mean, when I first started listening to programmers, it was really hard to understand, but after a while I started to get used to it, and it really sounds like some high level programming. Okay, so I see that question. How do we, Rabbi, can you read it? Because
Sure. How do we bring that into prayer? How do we bring that idea of space, quote unquote space, into prayer?
So he really hasn't gone into that very much yet. So I'm going to speak outside of the text. So what I'm thinking is that what happens is when we get up in the morning, we have things that worry us. We have certain threats that um, we're thinking about. Um, customers that we need to serve. We're relying on other people to get certain things done before we can, and this really, it really gets our soul really involved in it, and we're not really able to get out of this our personal situation and look at it from a bird's eye view. And doing this metaphor basically allows us to focus on something else and realize there's really a lot of higher other things that um, that allow us to there's like other things that we can focus on and allow us to connect with bigger ideas, and the fact that the creator of the world, he has the ultimate power, and it's important that we give our problems temporarily over to him, that he can really solve our problems, and we'll grapple with them afterwards after prayer. But right now, since he's able, we see his ability to create all these different domains. For sure, he could solve my problems. So I'm gonna put those problems onto him and request with as a free gift that he should solve those problems. And I'm going to make my focus to connect to the essence that I should align my behavior and my emotions with the oneness, that I shouldn't get caught up with things that I shouldn't be caught up with throughout the day. So I hope I hope this helps answer the question. However, he hasn't dealt with it yet. It's just we're still holding by Kav, by the ruler. It's just showing us that there's a potential for more, showing us how once we've established this in the programming, there's so much more that can come out of this. Is this also like the idea of Shabbos? Yeah, very much so, because Shabbos is the idea of connecting to the higher worlds. Like the lower worlds get elevated and connect up to the higher worlds. So every day prayer is a little Shabbos for us. Our prayer is our time to really lift ourselves up from this world, connect up to the essence. So when we come back down after the prayer, hopefully we should be aligned and not get distracted in things that are not important, and focus on the main things. Okay, great.
Really wonderful. So thank you so much, Rabbi Chirik, for teaching this and bringing this to practical application.
Baruch Hashem. Yeah, so we're gonna finish with this, and maybe you can say a few words about the parsha, or the time, actually the time of Sukkot, and Bezras Hashem, we're going to continue on with chapter 15.
We're looking forward to that. Thank you so much. I'm just going to pause the recording.